The chill hit me the moment we stepped outside, sharp, still, and biting. Christmas dinner already felt like a distant memory, the warmth of the crowded living room replaced by the icy air. Sam nudged my elbow, smirking as he held up a heavy-duty flashlight. "You sure you're up for this? Frostbite makes a fantastic holiday souvenir." I rolled my eyes, pulling my coat tighter. "I'll take my chances. Just don't drop that light, or we'll turn into frozen lawn ornaments." The village was eerily quiet, even for Christmas night. Houses sat still, their windows glowing faint yellow. Sam flicked on the flashlight, its beams slicing through the pitch-black darkness ahead. Outside that narrow circle of light, everything dissolved into shadow. We walked in sync, boots crunching ice and gravel, our breaths misting in the air. I clutched my camera to my chest. "We needed this," I said softly. "It was way too quiet in there. I felt like I couldn't breathe." "Exactly why I suggested it," Sam replied. We turned onto the narrow path leading into the woods. This stretch of road always felt abandoned at night. To our left stretched barren fields, frostbitten under a thin moon. To the right, the forest loomed, a wall of skeletal branches twisting against the sky, ready to swallow anything that ventured too close. Sam had teased me earlier about wild animals, warning me about deer in mating season. The thought of running into one in the dark was enough to keep my eyes darting between the shadows. At the forest's edge, something metallic caught the flashlight's beam. Sam stopped and I grabbed his arm. "What is that?" It was a car, an old, rusted sedan half swallowed by overgrown brambles, its windows milky with frost. The longer I stared at it, the more out of place it felt. Who would drive out here? The path was too narrow, and there wasn't a turnaround for miles. "Abandoned," Sam muttered, stepping closer. The beam highlighted streaks of grime on the windows and deep scratches on the driver's side door. "Why would someone leave a car here?" I asked, my voice louder than I intended. "Maybe it broke down. Come on, Maya, let's keep moving." But I was already raising my camera. The scene was too strange to pass up. "Hold the light steady," I said. Sam adjusted the beam and I framed the shot. The flash went off, freezing the car and twisted trees in harsh white light. For a split second, I thought I saw something, a silhouette in the shadows beyond the car. "Sam," I whispered. He didn't hear me. He was standing still, the flashlight aimed at the ground. "Maya," he said quietly, his voice trembling. "Don't panic, okay?" "Why would I panic? There's someone behind us." The air turned solid in my lungs. Slowly, Sam adjusted the flashlight, widening the beam. About 20 feet back, a figure stood in the middle of the path. Tall, thin, head slightly tilted, as if studying us. I couldn't see his face. The light didn't reach far enough. "Hey," Sam said cautiously. "You okay, man? Need help?" The figure didn't respond. He just stood there, still and silent. "Maya," Sam said, his voice tight. "Let's go." I was already backing away, my pulse roaring in my ears. The figure shifted, stepping backward, retreating into the dark. His movements were too slow, too deliberate. Sam grabbed my arm. "Don't look back. Just keep walking." We moved fast, my camera clutched tight. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't. I felt him still there, watching us. When we reached the edge of the village, I risked a glance back. My stomach dropped. The car, it had moved. The headlights flickered on, blinding us momentarily, before the engine sputtered and died. The man was now in the driver's seat, staring down the path. "Is he leaving?" I whispered. Sam didn't answer. We didn't wait to find out. Back in the warmth of the house, doors locked tight. Neither of us spoke. Sam stared out the window at the distant tree line. I couldn't shake the image of the man standing there, silent, unblinking. The next morning, everything seemed normal. The forest sat still under weak winter sunlight, but I couldn't stop thinking about the car and the man. Over breakfast, Sam avoided my eyes. "We need to go back," I said. "No," Sam said firmly. "We don't." But I couldn't let it go. After lunch, I convinced him, just for a quick look. In daylight, the walk felt shorter in the sun. Birds chirped, and the frost on the path began to thaw. When we reached the spot, the car was gone. Only faint tire tracks remained, half frozen in the mud. Nearby, something caught my eye. A small pink glove tangled in a bush. A child's glove. "Where did this come from?" I whispered. Deeper into the undergrowth, something else gleamed. A knife, rusty and half embedded in a tree trunk. "Jesus," Sam muttered. Beyond the knife, a shallow pit lay surrounded by footprints, empty bottles, and a stained sleeping bag. "Someone was here," I said. "Not living," Sam replied grimly. "Hiding." We left and called the police immediately. Later, an officer called us back. "We found the spot, but no car," he said. "But here's the thing. A car matching your description was reported stolen last week. The owner is still missing." That night, I heard it again. Soft, deliberate footsteps outside our window, and just before they faded, a faint whistle carried on the cold night air. We didn't sleep, and I don't think we ever will again. A cold Christmas Eve was supposed to feel special. It always had before. Cozy homes overflowing with faces you only saw once a year, tables heavy with food, and laughter loud enough to rattle the windows. That night had been perfect. Sarah and I spent hours at my uncle's countryside house, nestled far from the city lights. Snow blanketed the trees, and the fireplace crackled warmly, drowning out faint Christmas carols. I watched Sarah as she mingled with my relatives, fitting in like she had been part of the family for years. She even won 2 rounds of poker, probably thanks to my cousin's hopeless attempts at bluffing while flirting. She'd had plenty of spiked cider, too much actually. By the time we were ready to leave, she was warm, giggling, and barely staying awake. That's why I took the keys. I didn't mind. I knew those roads by heart. Sarah slumped into the passenger seat as I eased her car onto the frozen driveway, headlights cutting through the deep darkness. It's hard to describe how empty those back roads felt. Just long stretches of icy pavement surrounded by endless black trees, broken only by the occasional isolated farmhouse glowing like a lighthouse on an ocean of snow.
No street lights.
No traffic. Just me, the hum of the engine, and Sarah softly breathing as she dozed off against the window. The deeper we drove, the quieter the world seemed to grow. Route 216 was familiar territory, a long stretch connecting forgotten little towns. I could have driven it blindfolded, but something felt different that night. Maybe it was the biting cold seeping in despite the heater. Maybe it was how the trees seemed to loom closer, their branches hanging low, almost as if they were trying to block out the stars. We reached Mill Creek just past midnight. The road dipped sharply into a gully where an old bridge crossed over the frozen creek below. It was a rickety thing, with rusted guardrails and wooden beams reinforced with cracked asphalt. But there was always something off about that bridge, like the air itself changed when you crossed it. I didn't mention it to Sarah. She was awake now, groggily rubbing her eyes. "Almost home," I said with a smile. She nodded sleepily. That's when it happened. A flash of red and white darted across the road just beyond the reach of the headlights. I slammed the brakes, tires screaming against the ice. Sarah yelped, grabbing the dashboard as the car skidded and came to a jarring stop near the shoulder. My heart hammered in my chest. the sound of the brakes still ringing in my ears. "What was that?" I said, my voice louder than intended. Sarah clutched her seatbelt, wide-eyed. "Did you see that?" I nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah, I saw it." But what had I seen? It had been fast, human-sized, but it didn't move like an animal or a person. There was no stumble, no hesitation. It had crossed the road with purpose, like it knew exactly where it was going. "A deer," Sarah offered weakly. We both knew better. I stared out at the dark wall of trees beyond the headlights. The shadows seemed deeper, the branches clawing at the sky. "I'm going to check," I said before I could stop myself. Sarah grabbed my arm.
No.
"No way. Just drive. What if someone's hurt?" I argued, though I wasn't sure I believed myself. My gut screamed at me to leave, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was still out there. I turned the car slightly, headlights flooding the stretch of road where the thing had crossed. Sarah stayed silent, arms wrapped tightly around herself, her gaze darting nervously toward the woods. Stepping out of the car, the cold slammed into me, sharp and unforgiving. My breath fogged in the air as I shut the door behind me. The silence was unbearable. No wind, no distant hum of cars, just the faint purr of the engine and the snow crunching under my boots. "Lucas," Sarah called softly from the car. "Please don't." I ignored her. My eyes scanned the treeline, my pulse hammering in my ears. The darkness twisted shapes out of the branches, shapes my mind kept turning into figures. Then the car horn blared. I spun around, heart leaping into my throat. Sarah had her hand pressed against the horn, her wide eyes locked on something behind me. Slowly, I turned, stood just inside the treeline. A man or something shaped like one. His skin was sickly pale, almost gray, smeared with dirt and something darker. He was barefoot in the snow, shirtless despite the cold, and on his head sat a Santa hat, filthy and tilted to one side like some cruel joke. In one hand, he held a machete, the blade catching the faint glow of the headlights. He smiled. It wasn't friendly. It was slow, deliberate, and somehow knowing, like he'd been waiting for me. Then he raised his free hand and waved. I don't remember running back to the car or slamming the door shut. I only remember Sarah screaming, "Drive!" So I did. The Santa hat was the last thing I saw, a dirty smear of red vanishing into the trees. Sarah sobbed quietly as I sped down the highway, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to see him there, standing at the edge of the road, watching us. When we finally reached her house, we stumbled inside, locking the door and collapsing onto the couch. Neither of us spoke for a long time. "When you got out," Sarah said finally, her voice trembling, "he wasn't in front of you. He was behind you, Lucas. He came out of the woods further down the road. He started walking toward you, silent, with the machete raised. I hit the horn because I didn't know what else to do." Her voice cracked. Tears slid down her pale cheeks. I couldn't speak. My mind replayed the moment over and over. We called the police. 2 officers showed up an hour later. They listened, took notes, and promised to check the bridge. But I could tell they didn't believe us. Years have passed since that night. Sarah and I drifted apart as young couples often do. I moved away, started fresh, far from those roads. But life has a cruel way of circling back. This Christmas Eve, I drove that same road again. And just as I crossed the bridge, I caught a glimpse of red deep in the woods. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear it. A slow knock on glass and a voice, soft and distant, whispering, "Merry Christmas." It was the night before Christmas when I made the mistake of venturing into the forest. Snow had been falling steadily all day, blanketing everything in thick, untouched drifts around my parents' cabin. The kind of snow that muffles every sound and makes the world feel unsettlingly still. Growing up on the edge of a small mountain village, I was no stranger to winters like this. Back then, the silence felt peaceful, almost magical. Now it felt heavy, like the woods were holding their breath. We'd just finished dinner. The warm smell of roasted turkey and pine from the old wood stove lingered in the air. My parents were on the couch, quietly discussing the worsening weather and the storm expected later that night. I don't know what came over me, restlessness maybe, but the idea struck me suddenly. The old trail, the one I used to explore as a kid. I stood up, pulled on my boots and heavy coat, and told them I was going for a short walk. "You can't be serious," my dad said, raising an eyebrow as he swirled the whiskey in his glass. "It's Christmas Eve, Alex. Don't do something dumb." My mom glanced up, her expression sharp and serious. "It's late. Stay inside. I'll be back in an hour," I promised. "Just to the stream and back. I know the path." Dad sighed and muttered something under his breath, but it was the look my mom gave me that made me pause. It was strange, like she knew something I didn't, but I shook it off and stepped outside. The cold slapped me in the face immediately. The air was sharp, filled with the faint metallic scent of snow. I stood still for a moment, my breath forming clouds in the beam of my flashlight. The forest stretched ahead, towering black shapes heavy with snow. I could hear the faint creak of ice on branches and the drip of melting snow somewhere nearby. Then silence. The trail was nearly invisible under the snow, but my feet remembered the way. I used to know every bend and dip of this path. It wound steeply downward through the dense trees, narrow enough that I had to duck beneath some sagging branches. The air felt colder here, stiller, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. About halfway down, I stopped. The silence was overwhelming. Not a bird, not a rustle, not a single sound. It was so still my ears buzzed from the lack of noise. Winter in the woods was always quiet, but this was different, unnatural. I shook it off and pressed on. Eventually, the creek came into view, a thin ribbon of water frozen beneath a crust of ice. Just beyond it sat an old hunter's cabin, a decaying relic from another time. My friends and I had dared each other to enter it as kids. It looked smaller now, almost fragile. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a clump of snow hanging from a tree branch across the creek. But when I shone my flashlight on it, my stomach clenched. It was a rabbit, strung upside down by twine. His body stiff and frozen, its throat cut cleanly. Black, frozen lines of blood trailed down its pale fur. My mouth went dry. The carcass was fresh, recent. Someone had been here, maybe earlier today, maybe tonight. A sound broke the silence. Clang. I froze. Clang. Clang. It was a bell, deep and heavy, ringing faintly from somewhere ahead in the forest. My flashlight trembled in my hand as I scanned the darkness, but there was nothing, just trees and shifting shadows. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, a cowbell maybe, or a dog collar. But no one kept livestock out here. No one lived this deep in the woods. The ringing wasn't random. It had a rhythm, slow, deliberate, wrong. I stepped backward, my boot crunching in the snow. The bell stopped. The silence came rushing back, thick and oppressive. I turned around and started walking up the trail, faster now. I told myself I was being paranoid, but every step felt heavier. Then I saw it. Another rabbit. This one was sprawled across a tree stump, its fur peeled away, its limbs stretched unnaturally as though someone had carefully arranged it. Around the stump, boot prints, huge, deep, and fresh, circled in the snow. I stumbled back, my breath hitching in my chest. My flashlight flickered and For a second, I thought I saw movement in the trees. Clang, clang. The bell was closer now. I ran. I didn't care if I slipped or fell. I just needed to get out. The snow felt deeper, dragging at my boots as I stumbled uphill. The bell followed me, steady, relentless. When I burst into the yard, I didn't stop. I slammed into the cabin door, flung it open, and nearly collapsed inside. My dad jumped to his feet. What happened? I couldn't speak. I just locked the door behind me and peeked out the window, half expecting to see someone step out from the shadows. But there was nothing, just snow falling in heavy flakes, coating everything in a thick, white silence. Far away, faint but unmistakable, I still heard it. Clang, clang, clang. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the bell, slow, steady, counting down to something. In the morning, the sound was gone, but the feeling lingered. The weight in the air, the sensation of being watched. I promised myself I wouldn't go back, but promises are easier made than kept. Because by afternoon, the forest was calling me again, and against all reason, I found myself pulling on my boots once more and stepping back onto that snow-covered trail. I didn't despise Christmas, not exactly. I just couldn't find a reason to care about it anymore. The fake smiles, the gaudy lights, the hollow cheer buzzing like static under every conversation. It all felt so exhausting. This year, like every year when the holiday noise became too much, I grabbed my coat, tightened my boots, and escaped into the woods. The air was sharp, icy, slicing through my layers with a biting chill. The full moon hung low and pale, its light spilling like a sheet of cold silver across the snow. I didn't need a flashlight. The snow itself seemed to glow, casting an otherworldly light over everything. Out here, the world felt far away. The carolers, the bells, the relentless hum of holiday cheer. The forest stretched endlessly, trees skeletal in their winter bareness, branches clawing skyward like bony fingers reaching for something unseen. At first, the quiet was peaceful, but about a mile in, I noticed it had changed. It wasn't the usual stillness of winter, where snow absorbs every sound and leaves you in your own muffled bubble. This was heavier, a silence that felt deliberate, purposeful. No wind, no rustle of animals darting across branches, no distant owl calls. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I kept walking, the snow crunching softly beneath my boots, little flurries kicking up with each step. It's fine, I told myself, but my hands, shoved deep into my coat pockets, wouldn't stop flexing. That's when I saw them, tracks. At first, I thought they belonged to a deer, scattered across the snow in odd, irregular patterns. But as I looked closer, something felt wrong. The prints were elongated, almost like stretched out feet, with claw marks gouging deep into the snow. Worse still, something had been dragged alongside them. A long furrow slicing clean through the snow, uninterrupted, as if whatever made it had been hauling something heavy. I froze. The wind felt like it had stopped moving entirely. Just a bear, I whispered aloud, my voice trembling in the still air. But bears don't leave tracks like these. Bears don't drag things. And these tracks were fresh. So fresh they looked sharp and new, untouched by any wind or fresh snow. I should have turned back. Every instinct in me screamed to go back. But I didn't. I kept walking. The farther I went, the stranger the woods became. The trees seemed taller, their limbs twisted unnaturally, as though they'd grown in pain. The sound of my boots crunching in the snow felt louder, somehow mocking me for daring to keep going. My eyes kept drifting back to the tracks. They veered off the path and into the dense trees where the shadows grew impossibly thick. Against my better judgment, I followed them. Then I saw it. 20 yards off the trail, something stood among the trees. At first, it was just a shadow, a tall, unmoving silhouette. I squinted, hoping it was just a branch or a trick of the light. But then it moved. It stepped forward, just enough for the moonlight to touch it. My breath hitched. It wasn't human, not really. It was tall, far too tall, its head brushing against the lower branches. It was wearing something red. A coat, I thought at first. But as it shifted again, I realized it wasn't fabric. It was skin, patchy and stitched together, hanging in loose folds like an old quilt. Dark, matted fur clung to the edges, crusted with something I didn't want to identify. It dragged something behind it, a bag or what looked like one. Its impossibly long arm curled around the neck of the bag, pulling it through the snow. The bag twitched, writhing from within, and I swore I heard something faint, like muffled fists hitting fabric. It stopped and tilted its head. The motion was sharp, too fast, like someone yanking a puppet string. The loose skin on its body rippled with the movement. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Its gaze, even without visible eyes, pinned me in place. "Hello," I croaked out, the words stumbling out of me unbidden. Why had I said that? Why was I still standing there? It didn't answer, but it made a sound, a horrible, rattling wheeze that might have been a laugh. My body screamed at me to run, but I couldn't. I was frozen, watching as it took a step toward me. Its movements were jerky, wrong, like tangled marionette strings being pulled by an unsteady hand. The bag dragged behind it, leaving a dark, smearing trail in the snow. That laugh came again, wetter, hungrier. And finally, my legs obeyed. I turned and ran. The forest erupted around me, my boots pounding against the snow, my breath ripping through my throat. Behind me, I could hear it following. I didn't dare look back, but I could feel it gaining ground, closing the space between us. Branches whipped against my face, snow filled my boots, and still I ran. Somewhere behind me, the wheezing laugh rose into a screech, metal grinding on metal, sharp and unbearable. I pushed harder, lungs burning, muscles screaming. I tripped. My foot caught something hidden in the snow, and I went down hard. Ice sliced into my palms as I hit the ground. For one terrible second, everything was still except for my ragged breathing. Then I heard it, the scrape, right behind me. I scrambled to my feet, eyes catching the shadow creeping closer, its grotesque coat flapping in the wind. The bag beside it jerked violently, something inside fighting to escape. I ran again, blindly crashing through the underbrush. Ahead, a faint light flickered through the trees. A road, a house, salvation. I broke free of the woods, stumbling into an open field. The moon reflected harshly off the snow, blinding me, but I didn't care. I was out. I turned back, expecting it to burst through the tree line, but it didn't. It stood at the edge of the forest, still and silent, its head tilted unnaturally. The bag gave one final twitch before going still. Then it stepped back, fading into the dark. I turned and ran for the light, a porch light, a house. My fists pounded on the door until it opened, and I stumbled inside, gasping and shaking. I didn't sleep that night. I locked every door, pulled every curtain closed, and sat in the dark with every light on. I didn't dare look outside, but sometime deep in the night, I swore I heard it again. That wheezing laugh, faint and distant, and a single knock at the back door.